Hi, my name is Domenick Venezia. My book is Minidoka Legacy. I'm from Seattle, Washington.
And how about just tell us a little bit about how you got into writing?
I have written since I was a teenager in high school, teenage angst. Short stories, poems, and then I got serious with life and put that aside, went into business, wrote lots of professional documents, and when I semi-retired, I picked up writing again, and it's now become this compulsion.
And
it's hard to stop.
Was there a person or a thing or an event or whatever that made you decide, all right, I'm going to give this competition a shot?
Yes. I've Clive Cussler, godfather of modern adventure writing, and that's what I wrote. I didn't really know that there were novel competitions. Discovered that there were. When I saw Clive Cussler's name on one, it was a slam dunk. I had to enter it, and I entered my first novel, and then one of my readers said, "Why don't you enter the other two?" So I entered the other two as well.
And so your whole experience of writing, like coming up with the idea, sitting down for the first time and starting, working out problems during the process, handing it over to somebody, saying it's finished, of the whole experience, what do you think is your favorite time?
I love doing the research. I like to learn things. By the time I was 10 or 12 years old, I had every how and why book that was published at the time. I find the research fascinating. I tend to plot and do narrative kind of simultaneously because you get an idea, you want to develop it in some ways, you don't want to lose that. And like was said earlier in one of the talks today, writers save everything.
And do you remember, what is your moment of realizing kind of what writing is? Some people it's like they see the power of writing when somebody understands something, or you're reading a book and you go, whoa, I'm in another world when I do this. What was that moment where you got it?
I've been a reader all my life, read lots of the early science fiction, continued that into the future. I think one of the books that changed the way I looked at writing was Faulkner's As I Lay Dying. It's a book written from 4 or 5 different first-person points of view. The voices are different, the style is different. Every character is uniquely portrayed in first person throughout that novel. And it was kind of this epiphany that could actually take place in a book. And then every other writer really that I've ever read has influenced me in some way. There's terseness of Hemingway, got on a Robert Parker Jag recently, and terse dialogue.
Do you remember the first time you sat down and decided, I'm gonna write a book, and what it was?
Well, yes, I do. It was after my divorce. It never got finished. But when in my more later life, the first time I actually seriously sat down and wrote was one night at 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and had a short story written in my head. 2 hours later, I had 2,500 words written down in what I thought was a pretty good short story. That kind of started the whole recent jag of novels. I also took a countrywide flight in my airplane in 2012 all around the country. When I came back, I'd had a lot of experiences, seen a lot of country, and wanted to in some way capture a love of aviation and the experience of aviation. And that ended up being my first novel.
And I think everybody wants to know, if you win tonight, are you going to Disneyland?
Unlikely. If I do, I will not be getting on any roller coasters.
Okay.
And I'm going to stay away from the clowns.
Okay. With caveats, there's still a Disneyland possibility.
My wife would like to go, I guess, but and I've never been to Disneyland.
Oh, well, you have to go. Who knows what kind of book you'd write after a Disneyland experience?
Probably a horror flick.
Probably a horror flick, yeah.
Sure.
I agree. I just have one for you.
Sure.
When you write a series of books, like you do, and you're using these characters, is it tough to work on their story arc, or is that something you do over a period of books? Do you, how do you like Link, for example? He's different in the first book that I read that you wrote, and then all the way through, he's been changing. Do you plot that out on purpose, or do you let it happen? How do you change him for 3-4 books?
I've let it happen. It's interesting in that, you can plot a book, and yet when you start writing the narrative and as you get into it, where it goes can surprise you. And the characters have a life of their own. They become people. They become people to me. So, I do have in my mind a rough arc of Link's life and his sister's lives, but it hasn't been concretely planned out. It's more organic.
Well, they definitely are lively in the book.
Well, thank you.
Is there anything else that you wanted to pass on to other writers, or thoughts that you're having now that you entered and you actually got in the running?
Yeah, my advice to other writers is, in fact, enter contests. Every writer has their group of first readers. Mostly you know them in some way or another. There's some kind of relationship there. And no matter how many times or how emphatically you tell them that you want the truth, their responses are always colored by your relationship. And in entering contests, you actually get some sort of feedback, some sort of validation in a way that you really don't get submitting to a literary agent, which just basically you get a rejection letter that says, oh yeah, it was great, but it's not right for us at this time. I think there's great value in that, and it can help give you a validity that actually what you're doing is worthwhile.
Well, it was worthwhile reading those books.
Thank you. Did you read all 3?
I read all 3.
Wow.